The whole
All right, so here's some facts and
Hang on a
urban
second.
legends.
Now try.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Here's the first one. Can AP and IB coexist at BHS? That's a question we get. Here's the urban legend. We need to pick one. But that's not true. Here's the truth. AP and IB can and should coexist at BHS because they each have important and different purposes. In brief, these are them. AP courses are college courses taught at high school, so it's college at high school. IB courses are high school courses that get you ready for college. They're similar. They're both high-level courses, but they do serve different purposes. I need them both here because there's different students who need both of those things, and some need one more than the other. Second one. Why are there no honors classes in 11th and 12th grade? The urban legend is we need a level between PSP and IB. And the truth is, IB is the 11th and 12th grade honors level class by design. I was here 13 years ago when we developed the school. We had a lot of talk about levels and what it should look like here. And when we talked about levels, we knew IB would be the honors level. It's by design. If you're an honors level student, stepping into the IB level class should be what you're doing. It's by design. You don't have to do anything in between a PSP and an IB. Honors can slide right into IB. That explains it. I showed that 13 years ago. Slightly different fonts and colors, but basically for each grade level, there are foundations level classes. There's PSP, post-secondary prep. And for 9th and 10th grade, you'll see that there's honors level classes, and that does change by design to IB classes in 11th and 12th grade. And APs are sprinkled in there too. And those honors, IB, and AP classes are all weighted the same for a GPA. Is the IB pathway limited to the IB diploma? The urban legend says IB only serves the IB diploma students. And the truth is, every student at BHS is an IB student. We're an IB World School. By design, again, we vertically align our coursework and our assessments from 12th grade to 11th grade to 10th grade to 9th grade. Because I don't know who's going to want to really, the light's going to go on, a student's going to love a subject, they're going to want to pursue that thing that they have a passion for it. I don't know who those kids are. So I'm preparing everybody in 9th grade to eventually, if they want to, take an IB course. So as an IB World School, I'm getting everyone ready with the right skill set and the way to approach learning so that when they get to 11th and 12th grade, they can become an IB student. This is one of the reasons. Over 90% of our students are accepted to college. So for me, preparing those students to go to college is a primary goal. And if you recall, IB are high school courses that get you ready for college. So I know a lot of these students are going to apply and go to college. So I want everyone to be an IB student. This year, 689 students are in at least one IB class. That's much bigger than just the diploma students. And the diploma is just a single pathway. There are a lot of pathways through this high school. That's just one of the pathways. And it meets some students' needs. But IB is designed for all students, not just that group that become IB diploma students. Here's the last one. Is the IB diploma the only way to check the box for having taken the most rigorous courses at BHS? So on the common application, there is an actual box that counselors can check that says this student took the most rigorous courses at their high school. The urban legend is only IB diplomas get that box checked. But the truth is, any combination of honors, AP, IB, if you just stayed honor students in IB or just took all AP, didn't do any IB, you're still getting that box checked. Okay? That's an important one to remember. Now I'm going to turn it over to John. He's going to walk you through AP and IB.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you. Hi, everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about AP and the AP program, sort of what it looks like and how it works here at BHS. And then I will switch over talk about the IB program and how IB works at BHS as well. I can kind of see you, so if you have questions along the way, please raise your hand and I'll see if I can help you. And I might say, that's a great question. I'm actually going to talk about that a little later, so just hang tight. So that may happen. But I just want to start sort of with something that Bob said in here that I think is a good way to think about how these two programs are different. Because that's a question I get asked a lot. What's the difference between AP and IB? I'm asked a lot about making comparisons. And so college courses taught in high school classrooms is really what AP is about. It's why it exists, and I'll talk about that in a slide coming up. And then IB courses are really high school courses designed for high school students that are going to help them be prepared for college. So it's a good way to sort of differentiate the two. There are a lot of similarities with that said. And again, this speaks to some of the myths and urban legends that Bob talked about as it relates to AP and IB. But there are a lot of things that they have in common. And for example, right, we already spoke about the fact they're honors levels classes, that they're very challenging and rigorous. And that's gonna, the rigor level and challenge level is gonna change depending on the course and what year they're in. It is true that both will result in high quality learning. That is for sure. They both lead to assessments that are administered by us, but graded or marked by a third party, which is good for students to sort of hold students accountable, but also to hold us as teachers and as school accountable for preparing them for those exams. In both cases, the assessments are eligible for college credit, depending on the policies at the colleges and universities that students choose to attend. They are both well known and respected in the United States and Canada. Here at Bedford High School, they both carry the same weighted GPA impact that an honors class has. It's the same. Honors classes, AP classes, IB classes all get the exact same grade weighting. And maybe most importantly, AP and IB classes work just like every other class at Bedford High School. You can sign up for one, you can sign up for more than one, okay? You don't have to take all or nothing. There are some differences, and part of that comes from what each is trying to do. So AP classes are trying to replicate a traditional sort of freshman level intro to subject area class. And so for that reason, they tend to be survey style courses. They tend to cover sort of a broad range of content within the subject area. And because of just the way AP decided to do it, they have single assessments, one test that you can take. IB does things a little bit differently. They focus a little bit more on depth of learning. So in an IB class, for example, they might study fewer subjects, fewer topics, but to investigate those topics a little bit more deeply for reasons we'll get into when we get to that part of the presentation. And even though there's a singular IB exam at the end of the course, that exam actually has several components to it, some of which are done internally in class. So one good way to sort of think of it is for AP classes, you build up, you take that one test, you do well. In IB, you take multiple assessments and hopefully, by a combination of all of them, you do well. So just slightly different approaches, but both trying to achieve all of the things that I had on the previous slide. All right, let's talk about AP. Any questions so far? All right, excellent. So AP was developed, 50 years ago or so. The idea being that there were some students in high schools that needed additional challenge. They weren't being challenged in the traditional high school curriculum. And so the College Board, which is the same nonprofit organization that owns the SAT and the PSAT, developed the Advanced Placement Program. And because of that, the College Board has a pretty good relationship with colleges and universities throughout the country, and they have historically because of the SAT and the PSAT, and that bodes well for AP. Because of that, AP classes and exams have become very well known in the United States. Many of you probably took AP classes when you were in high school, and so they've sort of long been established as sort of those high-level classes that can give you college credit depending on your exam scores at the end. And that is a good thing. I know, as the father of 2 kids myself, who's going to be looking at college in about 5 years, for my daughter, any amount of money that I can save is worth it. So those exams can be a great boon for you. One of the good things about AP classes at BHS is that if you are a student and you are really interested in a subject for which we have an AP class, you can get a pretty significant classroom experience, depth and rigor in an AP class. If you're interested in psychology, we have an AP class for that. Comparative government, we have an AP class for that. So if those are subjects that you are interested in, AP can be a great choice for you. And I just want to reiterate the fact that they do work just like every other Bedford High School course. If you've taken the prerequisites that you need in order to sign up for the AP class, you can sign up for that AP class. And that's it. No GPA minimums. No, you should always take into account your teacher's recommendations, but they're not binding, so the choice is yours. These are the AP courses that we currently offer at Bedford High School. Not every single one will run every year because we determine which classes run based on student sign-ups. So sometimes there's not enough students who signed up for a course in order to run it. But pretty reliably every year, English literature and composition and U.S. history, those run every year. This year we have 2 sections of each of those classes. We have a section of comparative government, psychology. We have 4 sections of AP statistics. We have 114 students taking the AP statistics exam this year. It's the single largest exam that we're giving this year. Starting next year, there will be an IB math class that is also going to be an AP calculus AB class that will be running officially for the first time. So we're excited for that. So we're adding that. And then in the past couple of years, we've added 2 AP computer science classes, AP Computer Science Principles, which is sort of like an introduction to computer science. And then for students who want to continue down that pathway, Computer Science A is a little more programming intensive. So these are the AP classes that we currently offer. As you can see, they sort of are, with the exception of perhaps the English and U.S. history, they're sort of geared towards subject areas that we might consider otherwise an elective, an area of student interest, something that a student might want to take and to take at a rigorous level. Yes? Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question was, next year we're going to have a class. It's going to be called IB Math Analysis HL1/AP Calculus AB. A student in that class, most of the students in that class will be, most of them will be juniors who have taken honors pre-calc as sophomores. Most of them, but not all of them. They will be eligible to take the AP exam at the end of that school year. If they'd like to take the IB Math HL exam, they're going to need to move on to Math Analysis HL2 as a senior, and they would take the IB exam at the end of their senior year. And that's really a Calc 2 class. Does that make sense? It is. It is considered a higher level or HL IB class. And I'll talk about SLs and HLs a little bit later on too. Yes? We actually offer those as IB classes, chemistry, physics, and biology. Yes? Do I recommend? Yeah, so the question is, do we recommend, what do we recommend in terms of AP versus IB? As an IB World School, most of our what we would consider core curriculum, so that speaks to biology, chemistry, and physics, for example, are intentionally IB courses, and that is by design. As an IB school, that's sort of what the folks who founded the school decided to do. And as an IB World school, it's our responsibility to continue to foster that. So what we have done in the years since is we've added AP classes in places where we didn't already have existing IB courses. So if we look at the English literature and composition and the United States history, those two classes are primarily taken by 10th graders at Bedford High School, and that's an option that they can choose going into their 10th grade year. So we would recommend to a student who wanted to take that level of rigor as a 10th grader, yeah, sign up for those AP classes, right? And then a little bit further on down the road, they get into 11th grade and 12th grade, we look at the classes that they want to take, and if there's an IB option available, we'll recommend the IB one. If there's an AP option available, we'll recommend the AP one. It's important to note that what we try to do is avoid overlap. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, a teacher approached me and said, I think we should add IB psychology. I think kids would really like that. And while I agree, I think kids would really like IB psychology, we already have AP psychology. So if we added that, what we would end up doing is we would be diluting that opportunity for kids, and it might be that not enough kids signed up for either one to run, if that makes sense. So usually we'll make the recommendation based on what's available with the intention of not trying to have direct competition between AP and IB courses. Yes? Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So the English literature and composition versus the English language composition, the literature course is the one that is primarily the one that sophomores take to accompany the AP US history. So if you're a 9th grader and you're looking for a high level of rigor going into 10th grade and you want to take the AP classes, it is recommended that they, in fact, it's required if they take AP US history that they also take AP literature and composition. And that is a literature analysis course. The AP English language course is available to any upperclassman who is in 11th and 12th grade. Mostly 11th graders don't take it because they're taking IB English 1 as an 11th grader, but 12th graders do sign up for that class, and that is a good AP option for someone going into 12th grade who does not want to take the IB English route. It might be the only spot where there is, for all intents and purposes, two classes that meet the same credit need. But if they didn't want to take the IB English 2, which is the 12th grade English course, that AP language course is available for them to sign up for. It didn't run this past year because there weren't enough kids who signed up for it, so if your daughter really does want to take it, please have her sign up for it. A senior can take the literature course, and the senior can take AP US history as well. They're not prohibited from doing so. It is not required for a senior to take both. No, only a sophomore. Only a 10th grader who wants to take one has to take the other.
John, I'm going to suggest into the audience too, we still have a lot of slides to get through.
Yeah.
Let's do questions at the end.
Okay.
All right.
Let's do questions at the end then. All right. How do they work? Well, they work just like all typical BHS courses. They may sign up for them provided they've done the prerequisites. They're weighted the same as honors and IB. And this is an important thing we haven't mentioned anywhere else, is even though AP courses do culminate in an exam, those exams are not required. And the reason they're not required for students to take is because they're not free. They cost money. And so we are not going to require students or parents to pay for an exam. They're optional. However, students who choose to not take the official exam do take an in-class equivalent exam for a BHS grade. And that's intentional so that a student who might be in the class and wants to get the class credit on their transcript is still working towards some sort of meaningful end. And so that's why we have that policy. And that's true of IB courses as well. In fact, the IB slide for this is pretty much the same. So, all right, speaking of costs, the IB exams cost $94. That's the cost this year. They could go up next year or in future years, we don't know. But that is the cost this year, and it is important to know that we do have a small but meaningful scholarship fund here at the school that we can draw from to help students and families out paying for AP exams, okay? So our belief is that if a student wants to take the official AP exam, that cost should not be a barrier for them. And I'm happy to report that in the years that I've been the IB coordinator, and we've had the same system in place, we've never turned a student away, and we've been able to meet the needs of students who've asked. So keep that in mind. Obviously, if you're taking a lot of AP exams, that cost can add up. So just important to know that there is financial aid available. All right, should we move on to IB? Let's do it. All right, here we go. Again, from the very top, the key to IB courses is understanding that they prepare students for college, and they really do. And we have plenty of anecdotal evidence. Students who come back and talk to us who have graduated are like, you know, I'm like really crushing it at college. I'm not intimidated by the writing assignments that I'm being given. I'm able to think at a high level. My professors think I'm a superstar. And I mean, teachers at Bedford High School work really, really hard, and so do students. But I'm also going to say that part of that is because the system that we are a part of requires that of us, and that really does come from IB. It is a not-for-profit organization. It came out of the 1960s during the Cold War with the mindset that, you know, there's a lot of misunderstanding in the world, and perhaps we can do better. And so that's where the sort of origin of IB was over the years. What it has become known as is a highly rigorous program with students that produces students that are highly capable. And so a lot of the sort of the positive reviews of IB comes from how capable students are at the post-secondary level. They're really the ambassadors of the program. Promotes inquiry, rigorous assessment, international mindedness. If you look at the Bedford High School mission statement, there's a lot of alignment there, again, by intention, as a school that was built as an IB World School. And it has a particular focus on critical thinking and communication skills. So these are things that you'll see a lot. And if you are a current Bedford High School student and you understand all your competencies and all your classes, you know what that means. You know that communication is in there. You know that critical thinking and problem solving are part of our competencies. So they're all designed to work together. There's a lot of overlap between the approaches to teaching and learning in IB courses and what we're actually doing in the classroom day in and day out. Again, they're honors level classes that are in our core subject areas. We do have some IB electives, and like AP, they work just like every other Bedford High School class. If you've met the prerequisites, you can sign up for it. You can sign up for 1, you can sign up for 4, you can sign up for as many as you like, provided you have space in your schedule. Oh, this is you.
The idea behind it prepares kids for college, I just wanted to show you this graph, but before you look at it, you're going to see this is statistics from the class of 2013. Thank you. And so we all talk about 4-year colleges, but statistics from colleges are now released after 6 years. They report 6-year graduation rates. That is standard across the country. So we have to wait a while to get our first sort of data back, and it's the class of 2013's data that we can now look at. So I want you to start on the right side. Those are nationally public schools, the percentage of students who graduate in 6 years from what we call 4-year colleges, 33%. And as you come this way, nationally at private colleges, they're reporting 53% graduate in 6 years. You get into New Hampshire public schools and private schools, 55% and 61% of New Hampshire private schools are graduating in 6 years. And for the class of 2013, we're outperforming those other places, which is nice to see, and that's why I'm pointing it out. We're at 73% of kids who went off to college from that class graduated in 6 years, and that was 73% of those students. And then the next graph is kind of nice too. Well, within 6 years, yes. Correct. 4-year school within 6 years. Sorry about that. I'm too fast, John. Yes, you will. Okay, let's freeze right there. So that is the 73% that we just talked about from the class of 2013. This is their graduation percentages in years. And you see, our kids, that big yellow chunk, that's in 4 years. So the majority of our kids who graduated are doing that in 4 years. And then in 5 years, it's another 9%. And then we even have a big chunk in less than 4 years. So I'm proud of that. I'm just one piece of it. I mean, we have a lot of teachers here in a whole school district, all the way down to K, right? First grade, second grade. But we do a nice job, I think. And when you look at the statistics nationally, we're preparing kids for college. I think that's in part to the district. I think it's in part to IB, because the goal is to prepare students for college. And when they go, they're doing pretty well. And I just wanted to show you that. And as the years progress, we'll get class of 2014, class of 2015, but this is the first time really we can look at that data and compare it nationally. Yes? 90% apply. 90% of our kids apply. There's about 89% who go. The 73%, if we go back, or the 73% of the kids, some universities, the military academies don't report graduation rates, so I don't get that. There are some kids who we just can't track. We use Naviance. Students out there and parents who are familiar with Naviance, this is where the reports are coming from, and sometimes Naviance just loses track of some of our students. So the 73% that I can track, I know what they did. There's going to be a portion, and I don't know, I can't give you the number, that went to college and they either graduated and I don't know they graduated, or they withdrew and I don't know that. So it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but it's as close as we can get. But the 90% you asked about, those who apply, we have over 90% of kids applying. And last year, for the class of 2019, 89, I think, percent went to college. 93 of them applied and were accepted. 89 actually went.
Thanks, Mr. Jazokis. All right, so this graph, I put this graph in here because, sort of playing off one of the urban legends that Mr. Jazokis mentioned earlier about IB, because it is unfamiliar. Prior to joining the staff here at Bedford High School, I sort of knew IB existed, but I didn't really know much about it. It wasn't until I came here that I had the opportunity to learn more about it, and I'm sure in the conversations that you've had in your home and with friends, particularly friends who may not live in Bedford, IB seems like it's this mystery, and I think that lends itself, the fact that there's a lot that's not known with it, sort of colloquial out in the world, out in our community. I think that sometimes lends itself to the notion that perhaps IB is not as prolific as it actually is. So I came upon this graph from the IB organization a couple of years ago, and I found it interesting that 59% of all of the IB World schools in the world are in North and South America, are in the Americas. And then I dug a little bit deeper, and of the 2,932 IB World schools in the Americas, 1,822 are in the United States, and 945, of which we are one of those 945, offer the diploma program. So it is a bit more prolific. It is more common probably than we realize. It's certainly more common in places like Florida, in Texas, Virginia, Colorado, California. Those states seem to have lots of IB World schools in them. Here in the Northeast, it's not as prevalent. There's 4 in Maine, there's 2 in New Hampshire, there's a dozen or so in Massachusetts. But it is growing. It's a large and growing number. So I like to include this graph just to show that. And then, of course, this is probably the most important. If you take anything away from the IB portion of tonight's presentation, it's this, right? That All Bedford High School students are IB students. We believe that. We think that is true. We consider them IB students, and we believe that any student can be successful in an IB class. All right. Now to some of the sort of finer details of how IB works. So in the IB Diploma program, courses are categorized by subject group, and there are 6 of them. The first is your first language, which in our case is English. The second one is an acquired language, in which case here we have French, Latin, and Spanish. Group 3 is what we might call social studies. IB refers to it as individuals and societies. The classes we have in that group are history, business management, and world religions. In group 4, which is sciences, we have biology, chemistry, physics, a class called environmental systems and societies, and a class called design technology. So environmental science, you can probably figure what that is. Design technology is sort of like an IB engineering course. It's brand new this year, so we have our first group of students taking it this year. In math, the math pathway, the IB math pathway that we have selected at Bedford High School moving forward after this year is called math analysis. It's the one that most closely mirrors the sort of traditional scope and sequence of math education in the US. So your sort of Algebra 2, Pre-Calc, Calculus 1, Calculus 2 track. And then in the arts, we have visual art, music, and film. So those are all of the IB classes that we have to offer. And I'll talk about how this factors into the IB diploma, but this should just give you an idea of the classes we offer. And in most of these classes, we have 2 years worth. So English is 2 years. In Spanish, French, and Latin, those are each 2 years. So we have a Spanish 4 and an IB Spanish 5. Same thing with French. So all told, we're adding up to around 30 IB classes total. 30 distinct IB classes total in the school. And the graphic on the right, you'll see that pop up a time and time again. That's called the Diploma Circle. IB sort of envisions their curriculum as starting in the center with the students, and then sort of radiating outward from there. Not the outer ring, but the next ring in is the subject areas. And then we'll talk about that in a bit, okay? By the way, I believe we're going to make this entire presentation available to you digitally. Is that correct? Correct. Okay, so I'm starting to see the pictures come up, and that's awesome. Definitely do that, but we'll also make this available to you digitally, okay? All right. How do IB courses work? This slide should look familiar because it's basically the same as the AP slide. All right, sign up for them, provided they've met all the prerequisites. They're weighted the same as honors and AP, and they're not required to take the official IB exam. Just the same, exactly the same. All right, a few sort of finer details to know and understand about IB. You've probably seen the letters HL and SL. HL stands for higher level, SL stands for standard level. And what differentiates them is time, specifically classroom time and instructional time. So in order for a student to be eligible to take an HL exam, IB requires 240 hours of instructional time leading up to it. That's a solid 2 years at Bedford High School. So for example, a student wanting to take the IB English Literature exam needs to take IB English 1 and IB English 2. That adds up to 240 hours. They're ready to take that HL exam. An SL exam requires 150 hours of coursework. And in some cases, we can sort of pull that off in less than 2 years if we get creative with prerequisites and things like that. So a good example is IB Business Management. That's a 1-year IB SL course. However, in order for a student to be eligible to take IB Business Management, they have to first take the class Intro to Business, which is a half-year elective. And that's how we sort of add up to the 150 hours that we need to be test ready for those classes, okay? And the differentiation between SL and HL also comes into play when we talk about the IB diploma, which we'll talk about on the next slide. However, regardless of whether or not you're doing the IB diploma, it is helpful to know HL and SL so that you know if you want to take an exam, what exam you want to be taking, and how much coursework you can expect to do in order to be exam ready. Speaking of which, of IB exams, like I said, some IB exams do require 2 years of coursework. It is always important to pay close attention to which exams require 2, and if you want to take those exams, to plan for that, which is good. I'm sure that most of the folks in here this evening are probably sophomores or freshmen, or maybe even Lurgio students and their families, and that's good to be thinking ahead, because it's always easier to have a sense of where you want to end up and to plan backwards. Also understand that with all of the IB offerings we have, we've got a lot of flexibility as well. And also one important thing to note, and this is particularly important if you are currently in 10th grade and you're signing up for your 11th grade classes, you might be signing up for IB English 1 and IB History 1. And at this time next year, you might be sitting in those classes and thinking, I really like my IB English class and I'm doing pretty well in it, so I think I want to take IB English 2, but I'm not really enjoying my history class. Maybe I don't want to take IB History 2, but I signed up for History 1. Do I have to take History 2? The answer is no. At no point when you're signing up for classes are you signing up for anything more than your next year's classes, okay? So just know that you have the opportunity to change plans midstream, and that's okay. That's totally okay. So if you sign up for year 1, doesn't mean you have to take year 2, okay? But if you want to take the test, you should know that you have to, if it's a test that comes after year 2, you should know that and be prepared for that, okay? All right, for the IB diploma, I went ahead and put the 6 subject groups on the right because I'm referring to them on the left, and I figured that might be a little helpful. But if you want to do the IB diploma, and I preface it with this, every student at Bedford High School is working towards their Bedford High School diploma. On the day that they graduate, they will walk across the stage in their gown, and Mr. Jazokis will shake their hand. And do you hand them their diploma, or does a member? You do? Okay, and Mr. Jazokis will hand you your Bedford High School diploma. You're all working towards that, okay? In other parts of the world, that's not how the system always works. For example, in the UK, students choose when they're about your age which sort of diploma track they're going to take. Some take something called the A series, some take a thing called the Cambridge, some choose the IB diploma. At Bedford High School, if you would like to earn the IB diploma, that is in addition to your Bedford High School diploma, okay? And so your Bedford High School diploma is what qualifies you to attend college. So you will get that. You will work towards that. You will get that. So the IB diploma is sort of an additional accolade on top of that. In order to earn it, what students must do is they must take the coursework and the exams in the 6 subject groups. So an English exam, a world language exam, a social study, a science, a math, and an art. However, because IB recognizes that that might not be conducive to your overall educational goals, they do allow you to substitute out in art for a second exam in one of the other subject areas, which for us at Bedford High School usually is a second science or a second social studies class, and occasionally it could be someone who's qualified to take the IB exams in 2 world languages, but that's pretty uncommon to happen. So 6 exams, groups 1 through 5, and then either a group 6 exam or something from 2, 3, or 4. Of those exams, at least 3 of them must be HL exams. So again, those HL classes, those HL exams rather, are the ones that require 240 hours worth of coursework, so 2 years worth of coursework leading up to it. Almost all of our IB diploma students, one of those exams is their IB English exam, is an HL exam. For most of the others, history is one, and then depending on what their interests are, the third HL can sometimes be science, sometimes be a world language, sometimes an art, occasionally a math. That'll happen as well. However, some students elect to take 4 HLs and 2 SLs, and that's okay as well. IB will allow a 4-2 split, They do not want you to take all HL exams for your IB diploma, and that is primarily because they don't want you to do only academics. They want you to do other things, and I'll talk about what those other things are in the next slide. A few other sort of points of sort of rules that are really important to know is that if you are a junior, you can take up to 2 SL exams. So if you plan wisely, you can get 1, sometimes 2 SL exams out of the way junior year, which makes for a bit of an easier senior year. Many senior IB diploma candidates do take all 6 of their exams senior year. That does happen, and they survive. They're okay. And it's important to know also the HL exams may only be taken senior year. So we do sometimes have situations where kids are in 11th grade and they're really ready to take that HL exam. IB won't let us give HL exams to juniors, and that's because the program is designed to be a 2-year capsule, something you start at the beginning of year 1 and end at the end of year 2. But because students at Bedford High School are allowed to take the first year of IB biology or IB chemistry and IB math as sophomores, sometimes they get to that HL eligibility by 11th grade. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And just for the record, I teach a couple of classes here at the school, but I'm available during the day. So if you're a student in here and you're like, okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down, Mr. Cannon, but I would like to sit down and maybe map this all out with you and see if that works. Please come and see me, and we'll have a conversation. We'll put it up on my whiteboard. We'll write it all out. You can take a picture. It'll all work out, okay? Because it can get a little bit like a puzzle putting together a diploma schedule. In addition to the 6 courses and the exams, there's also something called the Diploma Core, and that's really important as well. And I bring you back to the circle, and it's the 3rd circle in, the one that says Theory of Knowledge, Extended Essay, and Creativity, Activity, and Service. So Theory of Knowledge is a class. It's actually the class that I teach, and I teach 2 sections each semester. So right now I just started with juniors. We just started last week. The 2nd semester started, and so they take Theory of Knowledge 1 during the second half of their junior year, and then they take Theory of Knowledge 2 during the first half of their senior year. Right now, Theory of Knowledge 1 is open to all Bedford High School juniors. You do not have to be a diploma candidate to take it, but as of right now, Theory of Knowledge 2 is only for diploma candidates, because we do some assessment work and things like that in it that probably are only relevant to those diploma kids. So that's just for diplomas, that senior first semester Theory of Knowledge class. It is a 0.5 credit class. You are getting elective credit for it. It's not just something you have to do as part of the diploma, okay? IB diploma students also write an extended essay, which is an independent research essay in a subject area of your choice on a topic of your choice. You get matched up with a Bedford High School teacher who's a teacher in that subject area, and they act as your extended essay supervisor for the entire duration of your paper process. We start that process sort of a month or 2 into junior year, and it ends a month or 2 into senior year. So the bulk of that work is done during junior year, and then it sort of comes together at the beginning of senior year. It is a substantial piece of work, but I will also say that it's probably one of the things that IB diploma students are most proud of producing, because they can look at that and be like, wow, that was hard work, and I did that. And for those rare students who really fall in love with their extended essay topic, it can be a real joy to watch them dive into that. So that's something that you will do. It is independent, but like I said, you're matched with a supervisor who will help you along the way. And then the last thing that IB diploma students are required to do is something we call CAS, or Creativity, Activity, and Service. And the important thing about CAS is, from an IB perspective, they want you to be a whole person. They don't want you just to be an academic in the classroom. They want you to be well-rounded. They want you to engage with your community in a meaningful way. And Bedford High School students already do that. You guys are already doing that. You're already participating in sports. You're already part of community groups, church groups, scouts. You're already doing things like community theater or maybe theater here at Bedford High School, band. These are things that bring joy to your life, that make you a whole person. They're the stuff you do in your free time. And those are all things that are worth celebrating and worth reflecting on how they have had a positive impact on you as a person. So I know at Bedford High School we have real world learning. And what real world learning hours looks like is 16 hours of community service and 16 hours of cultural enrichment, or is it 8 hours of cultural enrichment? I think it's 8. 8 of democracy in action and so forth. 16 of career exploration. IB does not want you to count hours for CAS. What they want you to do is be reflective of the experiences that you're having. And so what that looks like in a practical way here at Bedford High School, because IB doesn't tell us how to do CAS, they leave it up to us to do it in a way that fits for us. What we ask our students to do is to reflect on what they're doing, to keep track of what they're doing over 2 years, and then at the end of senior year, they sort of put together a series of reflections on it in a portfolio, and then they present about their IB experience during senior project celebration. And then in there's a spot where you do a little bit of a sort of a community service project that you work collaboratively with others to do. And for all of those things, primarily the CAS and the extended essay, IB diploma students are exempted from senior project. So we do take the senior project graduation requirement off your plate because it is really being replaced by CAS and extended essay. All right, when it comes to IB diploma planning, and this is a big part of my job, and I dare say, besides teaching my classes, it's the most important part of my job, which is helping students sort of understand their IB diploma path, and it may be a full diploma path or it may not, but I'm here to help everybody, okay? It's important to know that every student's path is different and unique to that student, based on what that student wants to do. If you really love film, well, you're not really a math science kid, right? There's a way we can put together an IB diploma path that fits you, that'll get you all those cool classes that you want to take in film, but still get you to the IB diploma if that's something you want to do. There's ways to do it. With that said, it's also important to keep in mind other BHS grad requirements, as well as sort of figuring out how to get all your sciences in there. I know that, in this community especially, there's a lot of emphasis on science, and that's awesome. And so sometimes getting all of that science in there when you only got 32 blocks to work with in a high school career can sometimes be tricky. So I'm here to help you with that. And so the best way to do this is to set up a meeting with your counselor and or with me. I know I have a good working relationship with all the counselors here, and so anytime you want to have that conversation with them, maybe you're coming up on a sophomore meeting or a junior meeting, you want to pull me in, just shoot me an email and let me know. Ask your counselor to do so, and I'm happy to help. All right, exam costs. IB exams are $119 per exam. That's $25 more than an AP exam. That's for this year. That has not changed in the past 3 years. That doesn't mean it's not going to change next year, but it's been pretty consistent for the past few years. If you add that all up for the IB diploma, 6 exams comes to $714. And again, just like with AP, there's financial aid available through the school. All right, and we can put people, if people want a payment plan or they want to stagger their payments out or pay it in installments, we can do all of that stuff. Whatever works for you, we can work with. All right, bringing it all together, just brainstorming some tips when you're thinking about how AP and IB might fit into your curriculum goals, your educational goals here. Knowing where you want to end up and planning backwards is always good. It's like going to the restaurant and sitting down at the kids' menu placemat maze and starting at the finish and working your way back to the beginning always seems to be easier than starting at the beginning and working your way to the end for some reason. Whoever designs mazes designs them backwards, I think. But that's sort of the way that it works well for us as well. Use the program of studies. They're rolling out the program of studies. It's going to come out, the new one, by Thursday night, and the current one is on there. You can take a look. I always suggest, I'm kind of a visual learner. It helps me to see things, so mapping it out on paper and seeing how it looks works pretty well. It's sort of how I would outline essays back in the day with Post-its and index cards. Pay close attention to classes that end in an AP and IB exam so that you are making sure that you are test eligible if you want to be. Don't forget about other BHS grad requirements. That's a big one. Sometimes you forget, like, oh no, I forgot to take a half credit of art. I got to get that in there somewhere. So they take Piano 1 as a senior second half of the year. That happens. Another big one is personal finance as a graduation requirement. So don't lose track of that. And I always recommend including a managed time. Managed times can be very valuable, not just for getting work done, but also getting in those quick meetings with teachers when you need to, and then getting other stuff done, getting organized, spending time to do that, or just taking your mind off of schoolwork for a bit can also be pretty therapeutic. So I always recommend a managed time. All right. Resources. Just know the Program of Studies is currently available under the Academics tab that has information about all of our AP and IB classes. The IB at BHS website is also a pretty valuable resource. There's a lot of information on that page or on that site. So by all means, go and check it out. You can always email me. I'm pretty good about getting back to you in a timely manner. So you can always shoot me an email with your questions, and I'm happy to help. Mr. Jazokas is sending out weekly news every week, and I know that he asks me if there's anything I want to include every week, and so if I need to include a little note about IB or AP in there, I can just add that in, and he'll make sure that gets in there. I also want to let you know that we have 2 Google calendars. One is dedicated exclusively to IB Diploma, all IB events, and then an AP events calendar. Right now, probably most what you'll see on it are when the exams are. So all the AP and IB exams this year are on those calendars. And those are Google calendars, and I think they're searchable if you can search in our network. I don't exactly know how that works, but I will tell you that when we share this slideshow with you, those links work, so you can get to them that way. And then obviously your school counselors, they understand the course selection and how that all works.